أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا صدق الله العظيم. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last week we mentioned the important Saraya, the small expeditions, as well as the famous incident of Ifk, and we mentioned how the Bara of Aisha radiallahu anha came in the Quran, how it was revealed in the 10 ayat of Seerah-Tun-Nabi. There are a lot of, as I said, expeditions that happened these times. The Sariya, which is a type of battle where Prophet ﷺ did not participate, but he sent expeditions to different places. And Ghazawat, as I've mentioned before, are battles where Rasulullah ﷺ himself took part. Now, what happened in the 6th year after Hijrah, Rasulullah ﷺ was, one day he was sleeping and he had a dream. Now what we need to understand is that when a prophet has a dream, it is revelation, it is wahi. We hear this, we've heard this number of times in the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was asked to slaughter his own son Ismail alayhi salam. You hear this every Eid al-Adha, how it was a dream, but it was, because it was a prophet's dream, it was a revelation. So he had to adhere to that, he had to act upon the commands of Allah. So now Rasulullah ﷺ seen a dream where he was doing tawaf of Kaaba in Makkah Mukarramah, and he seen the ashab, they were doing halaq and some were doing qasr, which is what you do after you complete an umrah or a hajj, is that you shave your head or trim your hair in order to complete your umrah or your hajj. Now this is the dream Rasulullah ﷺ saw, and this was obviously a wahi, was a revelation. So he mentioned this to the Sahaba, and he said to the Sahaba, "Are you ready to come with me?" And of course, Sahaba radiallahu anhum, one thing you need to realize is they loved Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We've seen so many examples during this series of how the Sahaba used to love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how they would give their lives for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to go on Umrah, or to travel with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was an honor, and which they wanted to do anyway. But also added to this was the fact that it was to Makkah al-Mukarramah. Now you got to understand, a lot of these Sahaba were from Makkah al-Mukarramah. They were born and bred in Makkah al-Mukarramah, and now they were kind of they were thrown out of Makkah al-Mukarramah by the mushrikeen. So it was a place they loved deeply. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he left Makkah Mukarramah, he's addressed Makkah Mukarramah and said to Makkah Mukarramah that, I would have never left if I wasn't kicked out of Makkah Mukarramah, if these people didn't persecute me and we had to, they were forced to leave Makkah Mukarramah. So it was something, which added to the whole, excitement of going on this journey. So approximately 1,500 Sahaba radiallahu anhum got ready, and they left with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When they reached Dhul Hulayfa, which is, if you perform Umrah and you go to Madinah Munawwara first, you have to tie your ihram before Dhul Hulayfa. That's a mosque there, just in the outskirts of Madinah Munawwara. That's the miqat of Madinah Munawwara. So when you go to Mecca, you stop there, you tie your ihram. Some people tie their ihram beforehand, but you pray at least 2 rakat nafil there. So that's the miqat of Madinah Munawwara, Dhul Hulayfa. When they stopped at Dhul Hulayfa, tied their ihram, and they sent a Sahabi to Makkah Mukarramah. So far we've realized that, what happened just before this event, before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had to go for this Umrah that they had planned, there was a massive, you could call it a world war, which we did not mention. It's a lengthy war, but that wasn't really fought, but yet Muslims won, which was the Battle of Ahzab, or the Battle of Khandaq. It was a battle of wits, really. It was all, who uses a better strategy, and Muslims dug the trench, and they eventually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the victory. But in all these battles, the two main players in this part were the Muslims and the Quraysh. There were Jews from the north, from Khaybar, who were, creating problems for the Muslims, and there were Jewish people around who were creating problems. But the main two, the main two players in this region were the Muslims on one hand and the Quraysh of Mecca. And things weren't settled down. There was no sort of treaty yet. There was no, they were really at each other's throats even now. So Rasulullah ﷺ said, I don't want the people of Mecca to think that we've come for a war. Muslims in the past, 300 or 600 had fought against the Quraysh of Mecca. And this time it was 1,500 Muslims going together towards Mecca. So the Meccans, obviously, they would have thought that this is war. They're coming to fight here. So Rasulullah ﷺ did not want to, give them the wrong information. So he sent a Sahabi. He sent this Sahabi to Mecca to inform them that, this is not war. We've just come for Umrah. So they moved on and they sent the Sahabi forward. Now the news that came back was that people of Mecca already know, and news used to spread, even though there was no social network, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter. News used to spread even in those days. People traveling just for business, they would see the Muslim army, they would go back to Mecca, they would inform them, oh, these Muslims are coming to fight you. Anyway, the people of Mecca had got ready for a battle, and they had sent Khalid bin Waleed, who was not a Muslim at the time. They had sent him as Muqaddamatul Jaysh, which means the person, who would lead the army. So this is the news that came from Mecca. So Muslims are moving with the intention of performing Umrah. They have got no intention of war, and they've already tried to inform the people of Mecca, but people of Mecca are thinking, these guys are just playing us. There are 1,500 of them. In the past, they have fought battles with much less the number, but this time they have got 1,500. We're sure, they are coming to fight. So they are ready on their side to fight the Muslims. They reached a place called Hudaibiyah, which is in the outskirts of Makkah Mukarramah, about 10 miles roughly from Makkah Mukarramah. And they reached that place, and what had happened was, when the Muslims came to know they are preparing for war and they've already sent Khalid bin Waleed, they changed their route. They did not go to the normal route. They changed their route. So they reached Hudaibiyah, and Hudaibiyah, as I mentioned, is in the outskirts of Mecca, and there is where the Muslims said, the camel of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it sat down. The camel named Qaswa, it sat down. It had never happened before. Qaswa would always be wherever Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to stop, it would stop. Wherever Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked it to stop, it would stop. But this time, by itself, Qaswa stopped. So the Sahaba, they had a habit, not the Sahaba, the Arabs in general, when an animal would be tired, they would kind of not tease the animal. They would say, Qaswa has become lazy now. Qaswa has become, it's become old now. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, don't say that to my camel, because this is the first time this has happened, and this might be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to stop there. There must be some khair in it. So Muslims, they sat there, they laid their camp there, and this used to happen, as I've mentioned before, when they used to travel, they used to have to take rest, because there was not cars or any of that. The mode of transport used to be camels and horses, and they used to get tired. They're living things, and people used to get tired, so they used to take rest, their kind of service stations. So they would lay the camp. So this is where Muslims lay the camp. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again, he sent a Sahabi to Makkah Mukarramah to inform them, we've just come for Umrah. We don't intend to have any sort of fight or any sort of war. The Sahabi went, and when they seen a Muslim, they were bloodthirsty. They just wanted to kill them. So they killed the animal of the Sahabi, and they chased the Sahabi out of Makkah. The Sahabi came back and said, they just want war. They're ready to fight, even though we are not. We don't want to fight, and they were not even ready for a battle. They had few weapons that you would carry as normal in those days, while you travel. with the fear of bandits or anything of that sort, but they were not ready for a full-fledged war. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, they need to be informed. You've just come for Umrah. They need, because this Sahabi, he couldn't even utter anything before they came and, you know, killed his animal and chased him away. He could not give the message. He could not convey the message. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Umar radiallahu anhu, Umar, why don't you go? You go to them. You know, Umar radiallahu anhu was known to be a hard man, known to be very strong, and you go, they were no one would dare touch Umar. Umar radiallahu anhu said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with all due respect, I will go. I will, you know, whatever you have said, I will go. But I cannot promise to come back. Because when I left Makkah Mukarramah, when Umar radiallahu anhu left, he declared, like everyone else kind of escaped from Makkah Mukarramah. Umar radiallahu anhu declared that I'm going. And if you want to stop me, if you want your wives to be widows, if you want your children to be orphaned, then come and stop me. This was Umar radiallahu anhu. So Umar radiallahu anhu said, this is how I left Makkah Mukarramah. I got them really upset and angry before I left. So this time when I go, there'll be a fight, definitely. Whether I come back or not, I can't guarantee that. But what I would advise, and Umar radiallahu anhu used to advise Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam a lot, and a lot of his advices were like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to reveal verses sometimes condoning Umar radiallahu anhu's advice. So Umar radiallahu anhu said that what I would advise is that Uthman radiallahu anhu should go. Because Uthman is well respected, even until up to now, he's well respected in Makkah Mukarramah. Even the non-believers, they respect Uthman. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam liked the idea, and he said to Uthman radiallahu anhu, are you ready to go? And Uthman radiallahu anhu said, of course, you know, if you say I have to go, I'll go. So Uthman radiallahu anhu went, and he went to Makkah Mukarramah. When he went to Makkah Mukarramah, he told them this, you know, there is no war. We won't, you know, we've not come for a war, it's just Umrah. He gave the message. And they kind of engaged him and, you know, were all around him, listening to him. Obviously, you've got to understand, this is a Muslim coming, this is a man coming from enemies. Even though they respected him, they listened to him, they did not behave with him in the same manner they behaved with the other Sahabi, but still there was tension. The atmosphere was still hostile. And Uthman radiallahu anhu comes there, and they are speaking to him, and they're saying, but there's still people around him. He kind of, you know, he's still under, how would you say, kind of house arrest, you know, in today's world, how we know. That's how he was. They engaged him, they delayed his, you know, normally if you would come back in about 2-3 hours, they delayed and delayed until the rumor started spreading towards the Muslim camp that Uthman radiallahu anhu has been martyred. Now this is what's happening in the Muslim camp. They are thinking Uthman has been martyred, and Uthman radiallahu anhu is still alive and is telling them this is not war. We are, you know, we have just come for Umrah. And the kuffar say to Uthman radiallahu anhu, there is no way we will let Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to, you know, do his Umrah this year. There's no way. And they kept on saying this year. The messages that were coming out this year, we are not letting you go. And what they said to Uthman radiallahu anhu, because we respect you, you can do your Umrah, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba can't do it. Not this year anyway. There's no chance they'll do it this year. So, you know, if it was you and me, imagine, how many is it, 250, 300 miles from Madinah Munawwara to Makkah. I've come on a horse and a camel, and this is my chance to do Umrah. We would have done it. Uthman radiallahu anhu said, there is no way in the world will I do Umrah without Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam can't do Umrah, I can't do Umrah. It's tempting. Just put yourself in that situation. You know, you've come, you've traveled, you're so tired, and the goal is right in front of you. It's just one step away from you. And you would have said, you know, I'll do Umrah and then go to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Or you can't do it this year, but, you know, I had a chance, I did it. But the love and respect they had for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was there to be seen. And Uthman radiallahu anhu said, no way can I do Umrah without Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The rumors, as I said, in the Muslim camps were that Uthman radiallahu anhu has been martyred. So then an incident took place which is called Bay'atul Ridwan, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took the bay'ah, took a pledge from the Muslims. that we will avenge the death of Uthman. If they have martyred Uthman radiallahu anhu, we will take revenge. And they were really upset. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was really upset by the news that Uthman radiallahu anhu was being martyred. And he took bay'ah from everyone. They put their right hand between the hands of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he did was, with his left hand, he said, this is the hand of Uthman, and I put Uthman's hand in this bay'ah as well. Uthman radiallahu anhu, later on in his life as well, used to always be proud of that moment. Said, all of you are proud of giving pledge to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used his own hand as my hand. So he used to be really proud of that later on in his life. What happened was, news then was confirmed after the Sahaba, they were ready for battle. We will fight to avenge Uthman radiallahu anhu's death. And this was light to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. The Sahaba were ready, even though they had not prepared for a war, but they were ready just listening to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and for their fellow brother Uthman. But news was then the real news came that Uthman radiallahu anhu is still alive. There was a man named Budail from Banu Khuza'ah. Banu Khuza'ah was a tribe, and Budail was good to Muslims. He was not a Muslim, but he was good to Muslims, and he said, this is what is happening. Uthman is alive, but there is no way people of Makkah will let you do Umrah this year. You'll have to forget about it, come some other time, but there's no way. And on the other hand, in Makkah, what's happening, there's an elderly man called Urwa. He says to the assembly there, or the committee there, saying that I will, let me talk to them. I'm an elderly person, they'll respect me as well. Let me talk to them, in his word, he's saying, let me knock some sense into the Muslims. He goes to the Muslims, he sits next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's kind of using this reverse psychology. And he's saying to Muslims, he goes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he goes, you know what it is, a lot of people, they make a lot of shor sharaba, as we say in Urdu, they make a lot of noise, and what tends to happen is when the mighty then come and strike, then all their friends and everyone leaves them. So what he was trying to imply was that, right now you're claiming to be the prophet, you're claiming to be this, there's a lot of noise, from your camp. But what will happen is, if people of Makkah and everyone who's against you, the Jews, as what happened in Ahzab, the battle of Ahzab, that everyone came against the Muslims, if all of us come together, and when they see thousands of people, your Sahaba, they'll leave you. You will be left alone. So he's kind of using this reverse psychology. Just forget it. Just go from here now. And when the Sahaba heard this, the Sahaba around, and their love and their ghera was something else. We've mentioned this throughout the series. So out of norm, it was not the norm with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He would never use foul language. That wasn't Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was known to be of a nice tabi'ah. He was not very hard or very harsh, but he would never swear. But out of norm, he swore. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, for the first, probably, wallahu alam, but it was not norm. It was not the norm. But because his emotions overcame him, he swore. I wouldn't mention what he said, because mashallah there are a lot of kids here. But he swore, and he used words because this person was kind of disrespecting Prophet ﷺ and was disrespecting the Muslims in general. So emotions overcame him, and sometimes it happens. I was at a house yesterday, and there was an elderly woman, and we were just talking. Our families were together, and there was TV in the background, and there was I don't know what was coming on, but there was some, you could tell, sometimes you can tell. You always have a person next to the TV there, or with the remote. If there are rude parts coming, just change it. Everyone does that, right? And in this TV, you could tell there's some rude parts or some advert to come, and this woman changed the channel. She moves on to another channel, something else is there. Moves on to another, and it's all rude, and she swore by mistake. And it's an elderly woman, and I was like, I didn't even know you could swear. So sometimes what happens is emotions overcome you, and you do. Islam does not teach you to swear. Islam is against swearing, so I'm mentioning to children, you should never swear. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not a fahish and not mutafahish. That it comes in a hadith that he would never, he was not the one to swear, and even, you know, out of, you know, sometimes you don't realize and you swear. Even that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wasn't that kind of a person who would swear without realizing. Such was the control Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had upon himself, and this is what we need to aspire to become. But this was because there was so much ghaira in them, and they were disrespecting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would not, no one could come in between them and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is why the anger overcame Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Khair. Mughira ibn Shu'bah was another Sahabi. And what this Urwa, this elderly man who was speaking to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every time he spoke to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he'd hold his beard. He'd, you know, touch his beard. He would touch his beard. Every time he would do that, you know, some people have this, like that there. Some people have this habit of doing it. Even in Saudi, you know, when we speak, they have this habit, you know, they either hold your beard or they hold your shoulder. But this was, you could tell he was doing it in a very aggressive way. He wasn't being nice about it. You know, sometimes you push someone's shoulder and say, listen to me. It was one of those, you know, a bit aggressive. So a Sahabi named Mughira bin Shu'bah, he had a helmet on him, and he was the nephew of this man. He was the nephew of this Urwa who was speaking to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he was a Muslim. He had become a Muslim. Because he had a helmet, Urwa didn't realize it was Mughira. And when he said this to, when he was doing this to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, don't do this. Don't do this. And he said it in a very aggressive manner again. Don't do this to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean it. Don't touch him again. You touch his beard again, I'll show you. He said, who are you? Who are you? This young boy. Who is this young boy? And he said, he removed his helmet. He goes, I'm Urwa. I'm Mughira bin Shu'bah. I'm your nephew. He goes, you are my nephew. I paid money for your, you know, your blood money. Because in his Jahiliyyah, what Mughira had done, when he was not a Muslim, he had committed a murder. And then his blood money was given by Urwa. But because he was doing it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not care about anything, and he said, you don't touch Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what I mean. So Urwa is looking at this environment, and he goes back to Makkah. He said, I tried my best, but you know these people, you know this man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is something else. I've been to kings, and I've been to the Romans and the Persians, I'm an elderly man, for business and for, you know, expeditions. I've been to all these places, but I've never seen the love the companions had for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I've never seen any king having this, you know, love from his people. Never seen this. This guy is not a king, he's something else, he's above the kings. And this, because his companions love him so much, if he spits, they would hold his spit. If he does his wudu, they would hold that water. His hair falls, they hold that hair, they catch, they save that hair. Because he's sweating, they collect his sweat. These are the kind of people they are. And I advise you, he goes to the people of Makkah, I advise you, do not fight them. Because if you fight them, they would sacrifice their lives, they would definitely win. I've never seen this love anywhere else. So I propose you to, you know, I advise you to have a treaty with them. Because these people are something else. I've never seen this. I was actually scared of that love. That's how much love there was. SubhanAllah. So the people of Makkah thought to themselves, and they heard what Urwa said, and now they sent a person forward named Suhail. Suhail was sent forward to sign the treaty with Muslims. I'm rushing through this. There's a lot. It's really detailed. And as everything has been, it's, you know, I'm kind of, because there are a couple of things I want to mention later on. That's why I'm rushing through this treaty bit. The treaty there was few conditions in the treaty. One of the conditions was there will be no war for the next 10 years between the Muslims and the Quraysh. The two big, you know, like, for example, just giving an example, America and China, or America and Russia. These are two players in the world at the moment. And that's how, I mentioned three, I know, but Russia and America. And that's how the Quraysh and the Muslims, these are the two big players. Now, there was no fight going to be between 10 years. Within, for 10 years there will be no fight between the Muslims and the Quraysh. And the other condition was people of Makkah that become Muslims and go to Madinah Munawwara, they have to be returned back to Makkah. Now, this was a very, very hard treaty, very hard condition. Because the next condition after that was, if people came back from Medina to Makkah, they gave up Islam, they came to Makkah, they will not be returned. So it was not fair from any angle. The Sahaba were listening and they were thinking, no way, we can't sign this. And then there was another was, no sword will be lifted at each other individually or in a battle with, like the first condition, for 10 years. And Umrah will not be done this year, it will be done next year, and you will only be allowed 3 days in Makkah. Do whatever you want to do, only 3 days in Makkah. Now, all these conditions are apparently going against the Muslims. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, said, okay, let's carry on with. The Sahaba was shocked, how can you sign such a treaty? There's nothing in our favor. Everything is against Muslims. SubhanAllah, it's amazing how important of a decision this was when you look at the future. But at that moment, and sometimes this happens, you look at something and think, this is all against us. But if you've got a vision, if you've got a long-term goal in mind, someone says a beautiful quote, someone said, there's a blind man asked a scholar, what's worse than being blind? What's worse than losing your sight? And the scholar said, losing your vision. So sometimes it's very important to, if you have a long-term goal in mind, sometimes you have to make short-term sacrifices. Very, very important. And this is what was done. So Ali radiallahu anhu was asked to sign the treaty because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we know, was unlettered. He could not, write. So Ali radiallahu anhu was asked to sign the treaty. Now Ali radiallahu anhu started with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So Suhail said, the person who had come from Makkah, an ambassador for the Quraysh, he said, no, what's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? We've never heard of this as a Muslim term. Arabs, they used to always sign the treaty with Bismika Allahumma. It's still, it's still Islamic. If you look at the content, it means, we start in the name of Allah. We start in the name of Allah. But Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim was what Islam introduced. It still meant praising Allah, but they had this, this stubbornness and this arrogance about them, and they said, no, we don't want to change that. What we have always been doing, which was Bismika Allahumma, we'll start the treaty with that. And then Ali radiallahu anhu writes, هذا ما قضى عليه محمد رسول الله. So Suhail says, this is what has been agreed by Muhammad, the messenger of Allah. This is what Ali radiallahu anhu writes. And Suhail says, if I believed in Muhammad being Rasulullah, then this wouldn't be a problem. We wouldn't be signing this treaty. So we're not going to accept as Muhammad Rasulullah. So there, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Suhail that, Wallahi, I am the messenger of Allah. Wallahi, I am the Rasulullah. But because we want to carry on with this treaty, you can write Muhammad ibn Abdullah. You write Muhammad ibn Abdullah. Write my name, Muhammad ibn Abdullah. Ali radiallahu anhu at that stage said, I can't do that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I've written. This was very hard for Ali radiallahu anhu. He's listening to the other side. He's listening to the enemies, and then he's asked to, rob ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Now he's asked to rob Rasulullah, something that he believed in. And this was very hard for Ali radiallahu anhu. Ali radiallahu anhu there, he said, I refuse to rob Rasulullah. I can't do that. I don't have it in me to do that. So Prophet ﷺ, being the mercy that he was, he said, just show me where it is and I'll rob it. And he was shown, Ali radiallahu anhu showed him, Rasulullah is written here, and he rubbed it with his Now, the treaty was signed, and Suhail, right before it was signed, Suhail made another request, that return Abu Jundal. Abu Jundal was a Sahabi who had become Muslim, but who was the son of Suhail, the person who came with the treaty. He goes, he needs to be returned back to Makkah. But to be fair, it was done before signing of the treaty. He had come, so there was no reason for him to be returned. But because this treaty was inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it was of such importance, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam agreed. And when that happened, Sahaba became really upset. They were shocked. They were really, really upset. And Umar radiallahu anhu said, Ya Rasulullah, this treaty wasn't signed. Why do we have to do this? Are you not the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is this Islam not haqq? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not one? And he was really his emotions overcame him. He said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has inspired me to do this. And, I made this decision and this is what it is. Umar radiallahu anhu goes to Abu Bakr, have you heard what's happened to Abu Jundal? He's been sent back, our deen is haqq, and why do you have to compromise so much? And Umar radiallahu anhu was really, really upset. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, subhanallah, because he was who he was, he said the same answer as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Without him knowing that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had said that, he said to Umar radiallahu anhu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have inspired Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's the messenger of Allah, and this is why, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has done this. Now, the Sahaba, again, they were really upset. They were really shocked, and because they have to go back to Madinah Munawwara now. They have come all this way to do Umrah. They had this excitement that we're going to do Umrah with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They had traveled so much, and all this tiredness and everything, they were really excited to go Makkah Mukarramah, just 10 miles away. A place that they love, a place that means a lot to them, where they were born and brought up. I was going to give you an example of Rochdale, if you were kicked out of Rochdale and you came back, but I don't think the emotions will be the same, will they? But so they were sent back to Madinah Munawwara. Now the Sahaba, before they were sent back, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because they were in a state of shock, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked them to shave their heads now and slaughter their animals, and we need to go back. This was kind of coming out of ihram. In order to come out of the ihram, they had to do this. But the Sahaba, in such a state of shock, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that to them, but no one moved. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said again, listen, just shave your heads and slaughter your animals and let's go back. They did not move. Third time, they did not move. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes to his wife, Salama radiallahu anha, who had come along with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I've mentioned before, if a person has multiple wives, when they go to suffer, how who to take, how you decide that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to decide by, again, what was it? Throwing the draw or lot? Yeah, throwing the lot, and whichever name comes up, and then that wife would go. So Salama radiallahu anha had traveled with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this journey. She said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, these people are in a state of shock. It's just, everything. It's like the earth has swallowed them. That's how they're despondent. They're really, really, they're unhappy. So what you can do is you lead from the front. You shave your head and slaughter your animal, and they'll follow. Like your ashab have always done. And this is what happened. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as always, led from the front. He shaved his head and slaughtered his animal. The Sahaba followed, and then they begin their journey back to Madinah Munawwara. On the way to Madinah Munawwara, what happens is, subhanallah, the verses which the brother just prayed, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina, we have, given you clear victory. These verses come down. When these verses come down, the Sahaba are saying, how is this a clear victory? And this was, the Sahaba later realized how this was a clear victory. I mean, there are a number of reasons that have been given why this was a clear victory for the Muslims. And one of the reasons was the peace and tranquility. It was for 10 constant years since the Hijrah, for 7-8 years, it was constant battles, expeditions. The Muslims and the Quraysh were always bloodthirsty of Muslims, and there was Badr, then there was Uhud, then there was Ahzab, which needed a lot of preparation. These are big battles, and then hundreds of expeditions, and then these journeys, these battles. It takes a lot out of person, and there was a constant fear of life. So there was peace and tranquility, and when there's peace and tranquility, there's a lot more you can do when it comes to ibadah, when it comes to da'wah. There's a lot more you can do. So in that sense, it was a clear victory, because what happened post Hudaibiyah was people came in herds. People came in huge numbers. who had become Muslims, they came and they accepted Islam from other tribes, not only from Mecca, because there was this fear that if we go there, we'll be killed. That fear, when peace and tranquility prevailed, and Islam got its izzah after Hudaibiyah. This is why it was of great strategic importance, and this is why it was inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also why it was a great victory, why it was a clear victory, was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent letters to the different big kings, big empires of the time, the Romans, the Persians, the Egyptians, and then the Abyssinians, the Habasha, the Najashi of Habasha. They were all sent letters, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent letter to the to Qaisar and Kisra, which is Caesar and what's Kisra in English? I think it was Khosros. Yeah, that's what it was. I can't say that. I didn't know how to pronounce it. I knew the words, but I didn't know how to pronounce it. So just so these were sent letters, and Herakl, when he was he was the Caesar, the Roman Empire, the Roman Emperor Herakl. When he was sent the letter, he Dihya Qalbi radiallahu anhu, a Sahabi who was extremely handsome and extremely good looking. When Jibreel alayhi salam used to come down, he used to take the form of Dihya Qalbi. That's how good looking, mashallah, the Sahabi was, radiallahu anhu. He was sent to Herakl. He was sent to Herakl, the ruler of Rome at the time. And he accepted, he looked at, he heard the letter, and he heard what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and he respected it. And he said, this is what this is what's mentioned in the Bible, this is what, because they were Christians, and this is what has been mentioned, and this sounds right. So he said, what I'll do is I'll call all my priests and all my, the big guns in the community, I'll call them. And what he did is he called them towards his, in his palace, and he locked the gates. He got the gates locked. And he mentioned, this is what's happened, this man has come from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's come with this message, and this is what is mentioned in the Bible, and this is what's, the truth we know. So the priests and everyone, they became really angry. No, this is all rubbish, and this is all this, and they just left. And when they left, they realized the gates were closed. And Herakl said, oh, I was just testing you. I was just testing you and seeing whether your faith, how strong your faith is. Herakl said to Dihya Qalbi, listen, I know this is right, but these people will kill me. If I accept it, and if I openly declare it, these people will kill me. So he gave preference to what people thought and what people would do to him, to the message. And this way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give him the hidayah. He believed in it so much that he actually saved that letter and put it in a gold box and gave it to his sons, and then they gave it was passed on, and he said to them, as long as you have this letter with you, you will never lose a battle. This is how much he respected Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and respected the message. But because he thought about people, and this is a lesson for us as well, in a lot of our things, sometimes we have to pray our salah and we think, oh, this is not a right place, what people are going to say. There's a way, you don't have to make a show of yourself, but sometimes when it comes to the crunch, we have to only give preference to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala thinks. لا طاعة المخلوق في معصية الخالق. There's no pleasing the makhluk, pleasing the creation, when you are not pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a usul we have, that's a fundamental we have. So this is what this person, and he also said to Dihya Qalbi, he still wanted to do it. He said, take this letter and give it to the priest as well. This priest I know is a very famous priest, tell him. And when he heard the letter, he accepted Islam. And when he accepted Islam, his people beat him blue. And he said, this is what I mean Dihya. He goes, if I accept, this is what my people will do to me. So he was kind of scared of his community, scared of his people. And then the letters were sent to the ruler of Persia. And he was, there was a Sahabi named Abdullah ibn Hudhafa. Abdullah ibn Hudhafa. Yes, Abdullah ibn Hudhafa radiallahu anhu, he took the letter from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the king of Persia, to the Kisra, the king of Persia. His name was Parvez. And when he was told about, and these people, remember, these were fire worshippers. They were Majus. And it was, with Christians, at least they believed in one God, and they believed, they were very similar to Islam. We are close to Ahlul Kitab. But these people are mushrik. They were, they believed, they worshipped the fire. So it was very difficult for him to take what Rasulullah ﷺ was saying. So what he did was he disrespected Rasulullah ﷺ's letter and he ripped it. He tore the letter. And he said, how dare this man, ask me to give up my religion and follow him. And he did not only do this. When the letter from the Roman Empire, when he brought forward to Rasulullah ﷺ, and when he told him what had happened, Rasulullah ﷺ respected his decision and said, inshallah, in the future. He never said anything bad towards Hiraqal. But when this man's, what he did, when Abdullah ibn Hudhafa went back, Rasulullah ﷺ said, and now his empire would be ruined. And that's what happened. Exactly after he tore Rasulullah ﷺ's letter, the empire, the great Persian empire, started to crumble. Rasulullah ﷺ, this man, this king of Persia, he was so angry. He actually, one of the tribes or communities that he had a treaty with, Badan of Yemen. He asked Badan of Yemen to send 2 people to arrest Rasulullah ﷺ. So he sent those 2 people to arrest these people, very big, and they had big mustache, and they came to Rasulullah ﷺ to arrest Rasulullah ﷺ. Imagine the audacity. They came to the Sahaba and they came to Rasulullah ﷺ to arrest him. And when they came to arrest him, Rasulullah ﷺ said, okay, but before you arrest me, let me tell you that your king has just been killed. Your king in Persia has just been killed, and no one else has killed him but his son. So they were shocked. They said, you can arrest me, but find out whether this is true. So they went back to Badan and said, this is what he said. They, asked the Persians whether this is true. They went there and they found out this is true. And Badan and all his community accepted Islam just by this gesture of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. SubhanAllah. Because he knew, how did he know it just when it happened? It was definitely inspired from above. It was revealed to him. So they accepted Islam. Then to Najashi, Amr ibn Umayyah radiallahu anhu, he went to Najashi, and Najashi put the letter on his eyes as a mark of respect, and he accepted Islam. And this is when the famous incident when Najashi passed away. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually read his janazah in absentia, in ghaibana janazah, what we call, which was a mark of respect for him because he accepted Islam. And he also, allowed Muslims before this to come into Habasha when Muslims were being persecuted in Makkah Mukarramah. The Shaykh Hud and the Makkah series would have explained that. Now, the third reason, so 2 reasons we find why this was Fatham Mubina, why this was a clear victory. One, the peace prevailed, Muslims could do a lot of da'wah, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent these letters, and there were more letters, there's no time to mention each one of them. There were letters to Egyptians and to other rulers. And then the third reason was the Yahud, who were causing a lot of trouble, the Jewish people at that time, were causing a lot of trouble for the Muslims because they were really rich as they are today. They were really wealthy at that time as well. So they were using their wealth to tell people, to bribe people against Muslims. Tell them, if you attack Muslims, we'll give you so much of our wealth. This is what they were causing a lot of trouble for the Muslims. And this is what they did in Ahzab as well. In the Battle of Ahzab, this is how they inspired other people to fight against the Muslims. So the Yahud the Battle of Khaybar took place, and the Yahud were crushed. At that time, the treaty was signed. Muslims actually won them. Muslims really, they crushed the Jewish people who were troubling, who were causing a lot of trouble for the Muslims. There were 8 forts. A famous big battle took place. 8 forts were captured. The 3rd fort, which was the biggest fort, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu went there. He tried to capture it. He said, this is a very big fort. I don't think we can capture it. It's really, really strong. We can't break the gate. How you used to capture the forts? You used to break the gates and kind of storm in. But they could not do it with the 3rd fort. And then the famous incident, Umar radiallahu anhu went, he could not do it. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, tomorrow I'm going to give the flag, as in the person who's going to lead the army is going to be someone on whom Jannah is wajib. and next day it was given to Ali radiallahu anhu, and Ali radiallahu anhu at that time had an injured eye, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam put his blessed saliva on it, and Ali radiallahu anhu said, since then my eye never hurt, that eye never hurt. After Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam put his blessed saliva on it, and Ali radiallahu anhu, he stormed the fort, and the big gate that was in front, Ali radiallahu anhu actually yanked it with his own hands. Can you imagine? We can't even do it to this door here, but a big gate of a fort, he yanked it, and not only did he yank it, imagine the strength, subhanAllah, he used it as a shield in the battle. He used the gate of the fort as a shield in the battle. Such was the power of Ali radiallahu anhu. So Ali radiallahu did that, and then the treaty was signed, and then what happened was the incident which I really want to mention quickly. Zainab was a Jewish woman who gave, who asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to eat at her house, and she laid this big feast. And Zainab, what she did was she actually poisoned the food, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it just touched the meat. Just touched his blessed mouth, and Jibreel alayhi salam came down and he said, this meat has been poisoned. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam let go of that meat, but the poison was very, very strong. And this is something you need to remember for our next lesson, inshallah. Just remember this incident. So Zainab was asked, why did you do this? Zainab said, I just wanted to test you whether you were a prophet of Allah, because if you're a prophet, then you would have come to know. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to her, and there are two narrations whether she became a Muslim or not. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to her that I forgive you for what you did to me, but there was another Sahabi who had actually taken the morsel and he passed away because of that poison. You'll have to, pay the penalty for what you did to this Sahabi. Then, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, towards the end of his life, this morsel has actually affected. Just remember this incident for our next session, inshallah. What I want to get to now is when the Muslims, there was a Sahabi who had come from Makkah Mukarramah after the treaty, when the Muslims were back in Madinah Munawwara, and he came to Madinah Munawwara, accepted Islam and came to Madinah Munawwara. And what had happened, according to the treaty, remember there was a condition that people of Makkah who accept Islam, if they come to Madinah, they have to be sent back. And this Sahabi, two people came from Makkah to arrest him, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, because we have signed a treaty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Awfu bil uqud." We Muslims, we have to fulfill our covenants, our pledges, our treaties. We have to fulfill them. And this is something, and uqud in Quran is am, it's general. Whatever we sign, whatever we, if we are living in a land where we have signed a covenant, and when you're a citizen of a country, there are a lot of conditions that you need to fulfill. You have to, live by them. You have to adhere to them. You have to adhere to the law of the land. Now, this is what was done. The Sahabi, imagine, he was definitely going to be persecuted. What happened with the Sahabi, what he did, he went to some other place. That was a different case. But Muslims, at that time fulfilled the promise. And what I want to get to here is, there are 2 points I want to make if I've got time. If not, I'll carry on in the next session. One is Muslims living in the West. We Muslims living in the West, whether it's England or America, or Muslims living in democracies of today. And then the general Muslims of the world. I want to talk about these both separately. We came here, some of your forefathers came here, they came here to earn money, they came here, some people came, they thought they were going to live for a few years and then go back and make, live a good life back in Pakistan, back in India, back in Bangladesh, back wherever, wherever the routes take you. But a lot of people ended up staying here. A lot of people, and we see today there are about 2 million Muslims here, 2 to 4 million Muslims, and very less of them are indigenous. Very less of them are, there are some revered brothers and sisters that we have. But what we need to understand is, there is, what I feel, this is my personal kind of observation, and speaking to different scholars, we've had a lot of discussions on this, but we kind of face an identity crisis at this moment in time. And the reason being, and this is affecting a lot of the work that we can potentially do, a lot of da'wah that we can potentially do, a lot of, not only da'wah, even within ourselves, live in peace and harmony, live kind of in a good atmosphere. It's affecting all that. Because when we kind of came to our senses in a way that we are actually living in this country, we are not going back, that plan of our parents, which was obviously they done the right thing at that time to give us a good life back in our homeland. That kind of was something that did not happen. And then the era came where we realized we have to live here, but we have to live here with our deen, with a bit of our culture and a bit of, we need to revive all that, because we had got, our original plan was different. We had to come to plan B, which was revival of Muslims in this land, i.e. Muslims living in this land along with their culture, along with their tradition, along, most importantly, their theological ground, their theological fundamentals. And there was this revival, and we kind of are a very young community. We can take a lot of lessons from the Seerah. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they came to Madinah Munawwara, how they established Islam, and also what is a good sort of place. I think coming to Madinah Munawwara, we can argue that Madinah Munawwara, it was majority Muslims, that we can take a lot of lessons, but what really relates to us is, Hudaibiyah relates to us, and I'll mention how. And what relates to us is the initial hijrah towards Habasha. When Muslims went to Habasha from Makkah Mukarramah, which the Shaykh must have mentioned last time in your last series, how that relates to us is about 100 Sahaba radiallahu anhum went to Habasha. And Habasha was Christian at that time. Habasha was, a non-Muslim land, and these are Muslims living. But what did Muslims do there? What was their goal? What was their objective? Was their objective, and this is not, again, as I said, I hate groupism, I hate sectarianism, and I'm not here to pinpoint at any sect, but there's this identity crisis amongst all Muslims. Did Muslims start the debate on, this is Darul Kufr, we need to establish Darul Islam here? Or did Muslims say, we need to overthrow Najashi somehow, and then we're going to bring our own Khalifa, and then that's how we're going to live? Or did the Muslims say, we're going to forcefully convert everyone in Ethiopia, in Habasha? Or did they just plead with Najashi that we want to live in peace, and we want to live according to your laws, but we want to practice our deen? That's all we want to do. We want to pray our 5 times salah, we want our masajid, we want to establish this community within your community, which will be kind of healthy for your community. This is what they did, and this is what we as Muslims in the West need to do. This issue of, some people say you got to do hijrah, you have to do hijrah, you have to, it's Muslim land, let's go to a Muslim land, let's do a hijrah. What is a Muslim land? It's a debate in itself at this moment in time. We're talking about current world, where do you go? But let's look at it from a very kind of practical perspective. You're talking about 4 million Muslims in UK have to move all of a sudden. Where? Which country in the world will take 4 million Muslims in the UK? Or 30 million Muslims in the West? Which country is going to take 30 million Muslims? And in Sharia, it's a very important aspect you need to understand, very important fundamental. When things become impractical, Sharia takes that into consideration. If it's something is impractical, it's not possible, impossible to do, Sharia takes that into consideration. And the rules change that way, in that manner. Now, 30 million Muslims are not going, we know that for a fact. And whether hijrah is even, is it something what people make it sound? And they give us the famous famous hadith that Ana bari'um, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I have nothing to do with a person who lives in Darul Kufr. Firstly, the hadith is very weak. Secondly, the hadith in itself has a context to it, even if we say it's right, it's got a context to it. You know, there was a Muslim attack on a expedition, a Sariyah, which attacked a community who were troubling the Muslims, but amongst them were Muslims, and it was referred to them as in, I'm not responsible for them because we do not know the Muslims are living there, so we killed Muslims by mistake, and that was not, you know, we are bari, we don't have that responsibility on our head. That was the context of the hadith, even if it's considered sahih. But this, let me give you another example of Hudaybiyah radiallahu anhu. He was, when Muslims were living in Madinah Munawwara, there was Darul Islam. Madinah Munawwara was established, and Hudaybiyah radiallahu anhu comes, he says, I've accepted Islam, Ya Rasulullah, and I want to live amongst you. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, you go back to your tribe who were what? What were they? They were non-Muslims. Who were non-Muslims, go back to them, live amongst them, pray your salah, and refrain from doing evil deeds. So that was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam telling the Sahabi to go back, live from Darul Islam, go back to people who are non-Muslims and give them da'wah. So sometimes what tends to happen is a lot of, you can really create a difference, make a difference in a land, in a non-Muslim land, by being a Muslim, by being a good Muslim. By being a good Muslim, you can give da'wah just by doing your daily kind of rituals as Muslims. You can give da'wah. That's very, by your character, by the way you deal with people, by the way you are with people. And sometimes we also have this misconception that, we are kind of, at this point, it's kind of this group of Muslims and there's a group of kuffar. And this is a constant fight. We are like the Quraysh of Mecca and people and the Muslims at that time. It's not like that. There is a clear difference between people who are at war with you, yes, and then there are people, like every Joe on the street, who is normal. They can listen to you, you can give da'wah to them. And these are people that we need to integrate with. These are people we need to, in a healthy way. There are people, again, who go on two extremes. As I said, we are in a state of confusion at the moment. There are people that are on one extreme, they will be completely compromising on everything the deen says and becoming, compromising everything. I mean everything. And there's other extreme, the people, they don't want to compromise on anything, even things you can compromise on. They don't want to know anyone, they don't want to talk to any non-Muslim, whether it's just, probably if I'm forced to talk to some non-Muslim at work, I'll do that. That's also wrong. What is right is integrate, keep your values, don't compromise on the basic fundamentals of your religion. There are compromises, if you can make compromises that are allowed in Sharia, then make, like we see in Hudaybiyah. There are some timely compromises if you have to make, you can make. But we can't get rid of our fundamentals. We can't compromise on them. You can't give up praying salah. You can't give up, giving zakat. You can't give up fasting in the month of Ramadan. You can't give up these things. But we have to have a healthy integration, which is not only don't bombard them with what Islam says, but also take the initiative that you've recently taken, the food bank, for example. That's an initiative. These are the kind of things I'm trying to say that we need to compromise, and not only compromise, we need to integrate. Food bank for everyone, Muslims and non-Muslims. And, cancer research or drug rehabs or things like that, we need to integrate in the society. This is how we are seen as, oh, subhanAllah, these people are, they won't say subhanAllah obviously, but these people are, mashallah, integrated. They won't say mashallah as well, but these people are integrating with us. These people, look at these people, they're not only, going to bombard us like, they're not, it's not, oh, we thought it was a kind of a, Jehovah's Witness kind of thing. No, it's nothing like that. We will speak, we will integrate with you in a very healthy manner, and then if you want to listen to our deen, if you want to talk about our deen, we can talk we can talk like everyone else talks about their deen. And this has to be the way we live here. And the goals that we need to have, this is the relationship we should have with others. It's not this group against that group. Our concern is for humanity. Our concern is for the world. And the concern, and even if we're talking to you about our deen, is not to forcefully ask you to become a Muslim. We're not going to bombard you with, with Islamic things. it's our wish that you understand what we understand, because this we feel is good for us, and because we are good people and something that's good for us, we wish that good for you as well. This is da'wah. This is not da'wah, does not mean you think my goal is to make UK into the Islamic State of United Kingdom. No, that's not my goal in life. My goal in life is to speak to you about my deen. Whether you accept or not, that's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, that bit, that da'wah I need to do. But two things we need to, as Muslims in the West, we need to keep in mind. We need to establish an atmosphere where we can pray, where we can do our daily fundamentals, and where we can live as peacefully as we can as Muslims, and subsequently create an atmosphere of da'wah. Where, again, da'wah does not mean bombard someone with Islamic things. Da'wah could mean food banks, da'wah could mean drug rehab. This could all mean da'wah. Good character, honest dealings. If you start committing VAT frauds and committing all the frauds in the world and say, we are, this is because this is Muslim and there is kufr and we are committing VAT frauds. Ask anyone who has who has sort of gone into these frauds and who has claimed this money illegally, which Muslim have they helped with this, apart from themselves? Does this money of yours go in some Dar al-Islam bank? It does not. It goes to your bank account. So don't fool yourselves and don't fool anyone else. No one is stupid here. No one is a fool here. So you're claiming all these frauds and stuff you're doing, as an Islamic thing. It's all rubbish. There's no truth. It doesn't carry any weight. So we need to live peacefully, and this is what the Muslims did in Abyssinia, and this is what the Muslims have to do. Khilafah is not our number one objective living in the West. Khilafah as an ummah, then I'll go to the ummah bit. That's a different case. But Khilafah in the West, living in England, this is not your number one priority. I'm sorry to say, if I've hurt you, I'm sorry. But this is not your number one priority. Let's bring a reality check into it. Let's be real about things. Let's be practical about things. We living here, 2 million, and you think a Khalifa is going to come and 30 million people of England are going to follow the Khalifa. That's ridiculous. It's not our number one priority. Number one priority is creating a peaceful atmosphere, where Muslims are respected, Muslims are loved, and Muslims are understood. Because what do I mean by Muslims understood is their message is understood, which then takes us to da'wah, and that's how you're going to call people towards Islam, and that's how you're going to give people the message of Islam. That's how you're going to do Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy anil Munkar. That's how you're going to bring up your kids in an Islamic atmosphere. Then, let's talk about Muslim world. Muslim world, now that's a different ballgame. Muslim world, we also need a reality check as a Muslim world. And we are part of that Muslim world. Being Muslims, we are one body. If your arm hurts, the whole body hurts. If the head hurts, your whole body hurts. That's what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, to the nearest meaning. And Muslims are kalbunyan, yashuddu ba'duhum ba'da. It's one building, and each one helps kind of support that building. So yes, in that sense. And the first and foremost thing, we've not got a common vision as Muslims today. We haven't got a common vision around the world. Biggest problem of ours, everyone says, you don't care about the Muslim Ummah. Care about which Muslim Ummah? Where is the common vision? Are you going to care about this group? Are you going to care about that group? Are you going to care about when you say Islam, when you say Muslims, who do you mean? Do you mean people who adhere to your methodology? Do you mean people who adhere to your fundamentals? Do you mean people who have a vision of khilafah? Do you mean people who have a vision of creating a madrasa on every corner? Do you mean people who've got a vision of just talking about Hubb Rasul? Do you mean people who've got a vision of just talking about Tawheed? All these visions are beautiful. They are amazing. Absolutely amazing visions. But as long as they are visions which are aligned towards a common goal, which is the betterment of the Muslim Ummah, the betterment of the prosperity of Muslim Ummah, pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if that is our common goal, if these visions are leading us towards that common goal, then there's nothing more beautiful than that. However, if these visions are just to maximize your group, to bring your group to, the top group of Muslims, or we are the only group which are going to go to Jannah, or is my way or the highway, if it's that vision, if your vision is leading there, then I'm sorry to say, we have got a big problem. We've got a massive problem. Our visions, these small visions, we need to come together. We need to broaden our horizons first and foremost. We also need to eradicate, this is what we need to eradicate. We need to eradicate groupism. First and foremost, we need to eradicate groupism. We need to eradicate this, this mentality of my way or the highway. And then we also need to bring in or establish a common vision. Two things if we do, I think inshallah we'll be prosperous. Which is eradicate groupism and establish common vision. And under these things, a lot of things come. Establish a common vision. All these things, the beautiful things that I mentioned of different groups, different sects, so-called, I don't even call them sects because they're not sects, different schools of thought, that these small visions that they have, if they could be aligned with a bit of fine-tuning on each vision, if they could be aligned towards a common goal for Muslims, then subhanAllah, nothing better than that. This is what we need as Muslims. And yes, when a Muslim in Palestine, something happens to a Muslim in Palestine, we are hurt. And as Muslims in the West, we are hurt. How do we make a difference? If we have what I mentioned, Muslims in the West, those two key factors, if we have concentrated on them, if we have established our community upon them two factors, then we are in a position that we can make a difference. We can make a difference, whether it's political participation, whether it's anything of that sort. We have to, and there's one thing saying, what can we do? Or just make dua. That you should do anyway, make dua. But, a lot of people say, this is what we have to do, this is how the Muslims should come together. But there's no one actually doing anything. And the only way that's going to happen is if we get off this groupism, if we get a common goal, if every Muslim and makes this an individual, individual exercise at this moment. If you yourself, me, if we think about, let's get rid of groupism, we need a common goal. We need to, the ummah needs to strengthen. We have to have a one goal ummah. If that comes into play, then inshallah we can make a difference. It has to start at grassroots. It has to start on an individual level, then on a community level, and then on a country level, and then inshallah we can make a difference in the whole ummah. But this has to start from you, this has to start from me. When we constrict or narrow our horizon, just we are Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, there's no one else who's Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, just let's, this tunnel vision that we have, until this remains, we've got a big problem. Once we break these shackles, and once we broaden our horizon, inshallah you will see an ummah will be prosperous. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability to act upon whatever has been said. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.